everybody. You are listening to I'm Over It. My name is Atlanta DeCadenet Taylor, and this is my podcast.
I do want to add that this episode does touch on some difficult topics, and just know going into it that, yeah, you might hear some things that might upset you, but mostly it's just two girls shooting the shit. And it was a pleasure to get to do this with Miss India. So I hope you enjoy. And yeah, over and out. So I am here with Miss India Oxenberg, who is an author. Her new book, Still Learning, I guess that's probably your first book, Still Learning,
yes.
Still Learning, which is available on Audible, an advocate and a producer as well of your own show, Seduced, which is available on Starz now. So quite, and how old are you? 29?
I'm 29.
Quite a roster.
Well, I've had a lot of time to catch. I mean, I needed to catch up. I lost a lot of time, so I was working double time.
I know, but still, how did you manage to squeeze? I mean, still like 2-3 years is, I mean, I kind of feel like I woke up out of my fog at 22 and I still feel like a 15-year-old.
I mean, I think it was just, you know what? At first, I didn't want to talk at all. Let's just be real. I did not want to talk about this. Who does, honestly?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why we have therapists. That's why we have people that are best friends to talk about really difficult stuff. So I thought that I could just kind of like disappear into the mountains with my then boyfriend, now fiance, and never talk about NXIVM again. That's what I wanted. But then I realized more and more that that's just not how it works. Like, you can't pretend that these things didn't happen. And I had to address them. And part of addressing it was writing, because first I couldn't speak about it. I like just couldn't get it out. And it was confusing. And I went through a very difficult, dark time in my life when I was, you know, when I had left NXIVM and I was trying to get back to myself, and I was working with the FBI, and that was very stressful and scary. I mean, you're not allowed to talk to anybody when you're doing that. And that was 9 months of being like kind of siloed.
Yeah.
And so it's been a process of healing, an ongoing process. And I won't sugarcoat it for anybody because it's not easy. There were times where I thought I was losing my mind. Like, I was going crazy. I felt suicidal. I felt hopeless. And I've gone through waves of that, panic attacks, you name it. And I just think that for me, it came to a point where telling my story was kind of my way to take my life back in my own hands, because it had been taken from me in the media and through other mediums, documentaries and books and whatnot. I was like, this is weird. I just need to have my peace and have my closure and get through this so I can move on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how many years has it been now that you've been out of NXIVM?
About 3. I left in...
Wow, that's all.
Yeah, I left in the summer. Well, I moved back to California from New York in the summer of 2018. I moved away from Albany in February 2018, but I was still under a lot of influence from them.
I feel like I know more about you than I know about like my whole family. I feel like between watching all of the documentaries and then in watching yours, Seduced, and then, you know, when I got your book now and I was listening to your book and then I, you know, read your
You're going to
email,
know a lot about me.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I know so much about this girl. I literally know more about her than I know about about myself, basically.
I mean, I've been watching the episodes with my sisters who are 17 and 19. And they watched episode 3 with me, which I had watched before with my fiance just to prepare him. But they were just like, wow, I had no idea that that's what was going on in your life. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, but it was. And I mean, these conversations are very uncomfortable. We often don't even have them with our own families.
Yeah. Yeah, because interesting that your sisters weren't included in the documentaries at all. That was a conscious decision, I'm assuming?
I wanted them to have their privacy and to have the choice to be involved if they wanted to. I asked them if they wanted their photos blurred. I made sure that from a producerial standpoint, I wanted to make sure any minor or Jane Doe was blurred. They were my priorities. I mean, everybody else was an adult who kind of consented to be there more or less in the footage. So, but my sisters did not. And so they let me use a couple pictures of them, but that's about it.
Yeah, episode 3 was really gnarly. I actually felt really like I'd been head over the head with something, with like a bat or run over by a truck. And it's actually been incredible because I've been watching it with my fiance, and he is like, I think there's still a lot of confusion or judgment about women and power roles of men and the manipulation. And I would imagine that, a cult makes it so much crazier, obviously, but this sort of judgment about that. And I've always been, I mean, look, I had your back I was like, no, like I really, I've been different, but I know what it's like to feel like you have no control over your life, and that I got sent to a treatment center when I was 15, and it was like at the time Facebook was like everything, and they deleted my Facebook, changed my phone number. I wasn't allowed to speak to anyone. And the thing is that, like, if I had complained, they would just be like, she's just being a problem. And then I'd get sent away.
Tell your parents.
Yeah. And then I'd get in more trouble. And then I wouldn't be able to, like, I wasn't allowed to get my license. Like, I wasn't allowed to do anything. And those like 2 years were really hard. So I related to that feeling of just like,
that level of control.
Yeah. And you can't escape.
Totally. And I think a lot of people have those judgments. I mean, it does make me sad when I see all the victim shaming and the cyberbullying. And I'm like, God, I wish that wasn't how it was, because it's one of the things that silences survivors and victims so much, because they're so afraid of just being judged for speaking out. And I understand your fiance's, reservations and also concerns of like, how does this happen? Or is that really the real manipulation? Is that real? Coercion is real. And it doesn't just exist in cults. It exists in unhealthy workplaces. I mean, look at Miramax, look at Harvey Weinstein, look at the Jeffrey Epsteins of the world. I mean, it exists of power, unfortunately. Women are usually targeted because we're typically more trusting.
Yeah.
And we're also more physically vulnerable and whatnot, but it has nothing to do with being broken beforehand or being stupid or naive or any of those things. It's really just wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
And being vulnerable in a time of transition makes you even more susceptible. Look, I was 19, leaving college, looking for direction. I mean, I was vulnerable. And I think that's just something that I've had to learn to not judge myself about, is just like, this wasn't my fault. Nobody asks to go to a cult. They don't know. It's deception.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do want to say that after watching Seduced, he was like, oh my God, I understand it, and I do think that it's kind of remarkable when whatever. I'm not of the type that's like, men should know better, this and that. And I'm like, okay, yes, that's true. But at the same time, like, the reality is we have to educate them or help them learn. Otherwise it's not going to get fixed. So being able
not
to
shame them for not knowing.
and so being able to like watch his process was like, and then he's like, gosh, he gets it. But I do think it's like, yes, it's not completely being naive, but I do think there is something about not being developed enough or something that you don't trust yourself. So you're like, like I related a lot as well to the part where you were talking about how, when you'd gotten that call from Allison Mack in LA, when she had first said to you, kind of like, there was a part where you talked about
not trusting my instincts
and making a decision consciously disregarding. Yes. Yeah. And I remember I had a very similar experience, and it got me in a very dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And that made me realize that I will never not listen to that ever again, because like my body
so
knows.
Good.
But it sadly takes like being dragged. Like for me, I'm not the type who's like, don't do that. And I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm going to go and do it. But then I have to learn. But then
me too, I'm stubborn.
So stubborn. But then, you know, of course, sometimes it's, you know, I had to learn that way. But yeah, I remember you saying that, and I was like, gosh, I remember that. I mean, you know, seems like it obviously.
I've done it many times. I mean, unfortunately, this just on the surface looks so legitimate. So my guard was already kind of down when it came to NXIVM and ESP, which was their kind of consumer product, which was the self-help program that they used to shield the rest of the behavior that you didn't even see until you went to Albany. And even that was pretty well concealed. So it's really, in a lot of ways, a bait and switch, because you think you're going in for one thing, and then slowly but surely, definitely not overnight, it shifts and you're already too compromised. For myself, I was collateralized, which is blackmail, more or less. It is. And that made it really impossible to leave when I was in D.O.S. I mean, I think that's one of the misconceptions that people might have, is that people consented to be branded. That's not what happened. They were coerced, and they were also collateralized. So their option or free will to say no was removed.
Were the women often like scared about it, or was it sort of felt like you were like going into battle to like, you know, that you had like, you were like, no, this is what I stand for, or were they scared? And
well, when we were on the inside, we were taught that this was a bonding experience. Like we were pledging. And there was a part of that kind of made sense to me. Like, okay, your whole philosophy is about doing things that are difficult, doing things that are challenging to prove that you are loyal. And I mean, like, it sounds ridiculous now to me, but at the time I believed that, given where I was. And we were scared, but we also didn't know how large the brand was going to be. We didn't know how long it was going to take. We had no idea that it was Keith's initials. We were told that it was a symbol of the elements. So that was another big lie. And so for a while, I was kind of like, okay with it. I just didn't really interact with it that much. But then when I found out what it really was when that just hit me so hard, and it was so disturbing. And I started to do more research and see how that was a common practice in sex trafficking, and for pimps to actually disfigure or brand prostitutes.
Really? I've never heard of that.
Yes. And and it was so gross to me that I actually, I ended up tattooing over the brand. And I like created this whole design that covered every inch of it, so that I didn't have to look at it, and I could just reclaim that part of my body as something I felt was beautiful instead of shameful.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can. First of all, I'm like, how much have you been talking about this? Are you just so exhausted about talking about this?
2 months of talking about this, and pretty much a year and a half of writing a book and being in a documentary. So I'm looking forward to other happier subjects afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, personally, what I'm most interested in and what I wanted to talk to you most was more about like your healing journey, you know, less about what actually happened. You know, I think it's, you know, there's a lot in the documentary and Seduced, you know, I'm sure. And as well in your book, you talk about it. But I do think that, you know, even when watching the last episode, I was so, you know, when you talked about, you know, that your suffering has a purpose, and, you know, like using your experience to change things, you know, and what was it, the coercive control, and how, you know, in different countries, there's laws against that, and not in America. And, you know, when I, you know, wanted to do this with you, I was like really impressed that I was like, man, she's engaged, you know, like you're doing all the things, it seems, you know, you're able to talk about this so candidly, so honestly, you know, and it's, you know, you're able to talk about this with your mom, you know, like all of that your sisters know. Just, it's so brave also to put yourself out there for I'm sure the cyberbullying is horrible. I can not imagine. Like, I get shit, you know, and I've never came out talking publicly about my experience even, like, and I almost did, and it was a whole thing. But yeah, I'm like, that's remarkable to me. That
it's scary. It is scary to put yourself out there and talk about this stuff, and it's re-traumatizing, to be honest, to like continuously be going back there, especially when there's journalists who are kind of like looking for the holes or the angles, and then I feel a little bit like on guard rather than we're having a conversation. But that hasn't actually happened that much. Mostly people have been respectful. It's the cyberbullying and the harassment there that's hurts me more. Like I try to just ignore it. I try to just delete and report because it's hate speech. And I hope that changes. I mean, I'm hopeful of that, but I don't know. That's kind of always going to be there. When you put yourself out there, you are taking a risk. But my healing journey has been difficult and also trial and error. Like I've tried a lot of different kinds of therapies. At first, talk therapy was very triggering and didn't work for me and made me really scared. So I avoided it. And then I found the right therapist that was so respectful and gentle with me. I also worked with a deprogrammer, which sounds kind of weird, but what they do is they help you re-engage your critical thinking, because when you're in a cult, you're actually indoctrinated to believe certain things very strongly, not only beliefs about the group, but definitional. So they actually change your vocabulary so that you feel that those things that they're teaching you are real. Like they change your version of honesty, of disclosure, of good and bad to fit their goals, not yours. So for me, it's kind of felt like having to just get back to myself, like get back to who I am. And I feel more me now than ever in a long time. I felt like I had lost her. I felt like I had lost myself. And I think definitely I have hard days. I mean, sometimes I just need to go home and watch cartoons and smoke and relax or have a drink or something, like just to chill, because it's tough. And it's hard for my fiance too. I mean, he definitely likes his privacy. And so this has been difficult for him. And I'm sympathetic of that. So I try to keep him, out of it, but it's not that easy. And I actually think that for me, one of the biggest healings that what is it? I mean, the biggest things for me were about healing my body too, because I was on a starvation diet for a really long time, which was basically like an induced eating disorder. And I never had an eating disorder before that. My mom was very open about her bulimia when I was younger. And so that kind of deterred me from it. But I definitely had to work hard to undo a lot of the control and anxiety and anorexic behavior that was taught. And healing my relationship with food. He's a chef, so that's awesome. And it's a great perk because we cook together and stuff. But I also took up boxing because that was hugely helpful for me. I needed to build back my muscle and punch the shit out of stuff some days. So boxing is great for trauma. And
that's funny. I have literally such a similar experience in that, like, I was boxing, and I also, I mean, not, I had an eating issue, and I was, my body is still recovering from it, like I still get like stomach aches when I'm, like, and even though that was, 10 years ago, like my stomach is like, I still have issues with that. I mean, I'd say actually in the last 3 years, I've kind of fixed it. The physical part is a lot better just through doing acupuncture, and, my periods are kind of messed up and like all of that stuff. Yeah. But mentally, it's still a struggle. Mentally, it's still hard for me to not I can go through phases where I'm very triggered by food, and I'm just like, I can't be around this, or, connected
it's
to.
ongoing.
Yeah, it is.
It's like, it's an ongoing thing. And I mean, like, my mom is very spiritual in one sense. So she likes to like refer to faith and prayer and things that kind of make you look outside of yourself. And that's actually been really helpful for me when I feel really lost. And I think it's going to be an ongoing thing. I think it's going to be like somebody in AA. That's kind of how I have to look at it. The battle is less aggressive and it's less scary because now I know what the triggers are more or less. So I can feel like, oh, all right, she's spinning out. Got to reel it in a little bit. Got to be kind, got to be gentle. Like, you're not a robot. You can take a rest. And
it's incredible.
like,
I'm like, how you were a baby your whole like life, 7 years of this you spent in this horrible situation, and you have so much self-awareness, and like it's incredible. How often, like, what is your therapy schedule like? Are you in like 3 days
right
a
now
week,
not enough,
or?
But right now I've just been working so much, so I have a therapist that I can call whenever I need her. Her name is Rachel Bernstein. She's actually in the series. And she has been so lovely to me. I mean, I have my mom to talk to when I need to. I have my fiance. I have really good friends that help me a lot and just give me perspective on things when I'm feeling down. But right now my schedule is way more fluid, and I just kind of pop into therapy when I need to. Before, I was rigorous, like every day, several hours a day. And so that was the first couple of months of leaving, and I actually needed that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what the hell had happened to me.
So you moved back home, I'm assuming, and just sort of threw yourself into like a therapy, like self, and just like that's what I did too.
At the same time with working with the FBI. So it was like kind of a perfect time to just be alone and go inside, because I was already having to talk about these things in a very linear way with the government, because that's how they do things. They question you over and over and over again and get the whole scope linearly. And so when I would go into therapy, I would be like, a memory came up, and they would flood every night. I would have memories come up. As soon as I left Albany, it was like the floodgates opened, and stuff just started coming up that I had never spoken about or never really understood. And my mom would just be there with me, recording me.
Wow.
And sometimes I would have a panic attack, and she would just have to like hold me on the floor. I mean, it was a mess. And I'm not going to pretend that it was pretty, because it wasn't. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to leave, is because I think you do have to confront these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, okay, by the way, there's a really big delay on this and I'm freaking out. So I might just switch over my Wi-Fi quickly to this other thing. So if it disconnects, just come back on. Don't leave. But let's see quickly. I'm going to try and, because I can't with the internet. Let's see. That works. Come on, baby. Hello?
Still here.
Still here. Still learning. Still here.
Okay. Still learning. Still here. I feel like that's the name. That's like, I'm ready to tattoo that on myself. Yeah. But just in still learning. I mean, I have it in my tattoo, but it's in Latin.
Yeah.
So,
okay, cool. We're good now, right? Can you see me, hear me? Okay, cool. So I noticed that something that you talked about was just not using the word victim. And why was that so important to you?
Well, actually, I've changed my relationship to it. Because when I was inside of NXIVM, or inside of D.O.S specifically, victimhood was something that was looked down upon. It was like a disgusting thing that they tried to kind of beat out of you and replace with personal responsibility, which meant that you were the decider or causing agent of everything in your life. And in theory, that sounds cool, because we all want to be responsible for ourselves and whatnot. But when you take that to an extreme, it basically means that anybody can do anything to you and you are never at fault.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to accept that I had been victimized, and victimized specifically by Keith Raniere and Allison Mack and the higher ranking members. And that was a hard pill to swallow, because I didn't want to see myself like that. Like I had a lot of judgment about accepting that I had been duped, if you will, or, led astray in a very dangerous direction. And so I denied it for a while. And then when I actually just sat with it, I had to just be okay with the fact that that was true, but that I don't have to live like that. Like, I don't have to live as a victim. And I put that in my victim impact statement that I read at court, because I really do believe that. Like, I think that bad shit happens, and it happens to a lot of people, but you don't have to let it take over and destroy your life.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece, because I also, I think there are some things that, when it comes like that we might be a victim to, and that there are parts of that that are just like that. I didn't have anything to do with that. That was not okay. Like, but then it's like, okay, well, am I going to hold on to this? Am I going to use this as an excuse for sort of bad behavior, everything, or having this as like, well, you would do this too if you, went through what I went through. And or as you said, you can do what you're doing as well, which is taking it and, doing something great with it and educating people and talking openly about these things that, there's a lot of misconceptions about. And it isn't something, it's really rare that you would have a young woman come out and talk about something so extreme. So, that's always what kept me going as well. And so many times where I felt like I wasn't worth it, I knew that there were other women and girls who were worth it. So on the days,
I've relied a lot on that.
Yeah, like on the days where I'd be like, it doesn't matter, what you're doing doesn't matter, this or that, you get DMs from people or whatnot, and you'd be like, right, okay, what I'm doing is helpful.
I have to remind myself all the time, because sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I can't take another like mean thing. And then, or like a really harsh comment. I'm like, oh my God, if somebody else calls me a cunt that wished this upon me, I'm going to literally delete Instagram. And then I get these messages, like just this morning, I was taking a walk with my mom, and a message popped in to a DM about a girl who met this guy who presented himself as a spiritual guru. And he actually ended up being a pimp. And he removed her from where she was living in New York, or it was something like she was either in New York and he was in Australia. They met up, and he started to exploit her for money and sex and all of these things. And she said, he has a criminal record. No one's listening to me. He hasn't been charged. Can you help me? And she said, this is happening to other girls right now. And it just like, it made me feel so like I have chills all over, because I'm thinking, oh my God, this is so much bigger than me. I'm just one person in a pool of this out in the world, not only in the US, but globally.
Yeah. And then there's the piece of, how do you not go down the rabbit hole too much, and how do you maintain because that's something that, I like bottomed out like last 2 years, crazy, I can't believe it's been like almost a year of being in COVID, but like last year I had a bit of a thing where I was like, okay, you need to find a happy medium, because I was getting very like the news and like all of that stuff, and it was kind of challenging for me. But it's a beauty. It's incredible, and people knowing they can speak to you.
And I'm always open. Like I love those types of messages, because it makes me believe that we're making an impact and we're making an impression on people. And so I feel proud of that. I also need a team because I can't do all this by myself. And I know my mom is getting tired too. She's been working so hard. And I definitely want to collaborate with people who have the resources and are able to help women like this, either extract them from sex trafficking situations, or just get them the therapy that they need so that they don't fall back into something like this. Because I know that was huge for me. The fact that I had my family and my mom to give me as much therapy as I needed, not everybody can have that. And it was so valuable for me. So I hope that I can do more of that, and also find the balance for my life, which my fiance is very good at doing. He's like, put your phone away, we're going camping. And I'm like, okay, cool.
That's like me. with mine.
Yeah.
He's such a
He does
workaholic. I'm like, you can't use your phone past 11 o'clock or like leave it
that's a good
upstairs. Oh, that's not, we don't do it most times. But like if he's really manic about work or something's going on, I'm like, we're going to dinner and you're leaving your phone. Stuff like that. But do you have like plans? Do you imagine that this is kind of going to be in terms of like advocacy? Do you see that being your everything? Are you still interested in kind of doing other career-based things? I mean, obviously, we're like the same age, so I'm still figuring out as well.
Yeah,
I'm 28.
I'm still figuring it out. Okay,
almost 29.
When's your birthday?
Not almost, March 31st.
Okay, close.
What are you?
I'm June 7th. So
wait, that's 30. My fiance's birthday.
No way.
Yes.
Gemini's.
Yes.
Oh, funny.
That he's gonna love that. That's really funny.
Good.
Okay.
We'll have to have a birthday celebration.
Yeah, that's, oh my God, I love that.
I'll be 30. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I feel that.
Basically, I definitely want to make advocacy a focus of mine because it really makes me feel fulfilled and makes me feel proud of what I'm doing. And it's a way for me to take my experience and do something good with it that doesn't involve me talking that much. I am a pretty private person, so all the exposure has been a lot for me. I'm not crazy about just doing entertainment or media for the sake of media or attention. I mean, that just doesn't really make sense to me. The only reason why I would do it is if it was something important to draw attention to. So producing and being behind the camera is more what I prefer, with especially topics to do with women's issues. That seems, I'm more motivated by that. I'd love to write, so I'm probably going to continue doing that as well. But I'm open. I mean, I'm a foodie. My soon-to-be husband is a chef, so I mean, I'll be in his restaurant like I always am.
Yeah.
So
do you see yourself writing maybe like a fiction book?
Oh, I haven't thought about that actually.
You should do a fiction book based off of your experiences. That would be incredible.
That would be
or like fun. About a young girl who, ends up in a situation
like Dorothy.
Yeah, or just like, and that I always loved the idea of writing more of a fiction-based story. I don't know why. I always thought that would be a good way to like connect with younger girls in a way of like, okay, you don't need to read about this like really awful stuff, but like you can understand these sort of behaviors or red flags that might deter
to reach more.
Like just younger people that they can't watch and mature, they can't see that, but
I do think teenage girls do need to learn about this stuff. Like I wished that I would have known more about predatory behavior when I was in school, because I mean, I was even kind of experiencing things like this in high school. And I grew up here in LA. I went to public school in Malibu.
Did you?
And yeah, I went to Malibu High.
Wait, do you know Charlotte Patterson?
No, I don't.
Okay, she would have been like your grade and went to Malibu High for a while.
Charlotte Patterson. I mean, I would probably recognize her face if I saw her because it was a small school.
Yeah. Okay, that's funny, yeah.
So, yeah, I think I wish I would have known that, because I think I would have had more self-worth if I would have built more self-worth rather than looking outside of myself for acceptance, especially from men. Because I remember even doing that from the time I was, 15, like, please, like me, give me attention, like, tell me I'm pretty and good and all of that. I'm like, why?
I know. No, I feel that. I completely relate to that. I had a lot of that same behavior, and now I'm just like, who cares? I'm like, these dudes would be so lucky to get your attention. Like, why do we have to constantly be catering to them and thinking that like we need they should be wanting our approval. Our bodies are temples, our bodies do wonderful, incredible things. Like, what do? You just have a dick that like sticks into things.
They can lift up shit that's real heavy.
Like, congratulations, like,
I mean, there's a lot of good men out there that I have respect for, but I think there's that's just so common with young women. And I love your idea of doing something more fictional, because I do think that that could reach, I mean, I have an 11-year-old niece. There's no way she's watching this series.
Exactly.
But if there was something that I could do that could reach that demographic, I would definitely look into that.
Yeah, that's the same. I have a 14-year-old. She just turned 14-year-old baby sister. She's not a baby anymore, but I've talked about this before, but it's almost like she's one of my biggest inspirations and motivations, and that I'm just like, gosh, I hope that I can help create a world for her that, you know, isn't like it is now, when it comes to our bodies and our self-esteem and whatnot. I mean, it's challenging because there are some things that I just think we can only learn through getting older. There are just some things that, you know, when you, like, some girls I speak to and they're like, I don't know what to do. What do I do? And I'm like, gosh, like,
you just gotta,
it's just time. Like, how do you heal? Like, some of it is just time. Like, sure, you can do therapy, you can do all that stuff, and it's all cohesive, but to a degree, like, only time. And it's horrible to have to tell someone that, because they're like, shit, can I just fast forward? And you're like, no.
Right. Or just give me the tips. And I'm like, no, some of it you just got to kind of mess up.
You know?
And you just need to mess it up, clean it up, see how you made mistakes. I mean, I made so many mistakes, especially when I was inside of the group, not even including high school, but I learned from them. And I hope that I can continue to learn from them and to change things in myself. And I have little sisters too, so I feel ya.
How did you end up in a relationship after that? Like, how were you able to do that? I mean,
I wasn't looking for one, that's for sure. I was like, stay away. All people, all guys. I mean, like, I didn't want it. But I'm pretty, like I said, I'm pretty stubborn. So oftentimes I think that I can do it all on my own. And I was kind of I mean, I had just left NXIVM. I was trying to get away from like the media and the paparazzi who were chasing me around my work. And I was just trying to keep a job. And I was managing a restaurant at the time in the East Village. And
my old hood.
Yeah, I love that. That's my neighborhood too.
Really?
And I mean, that's where I lived. So I lived in Brooklyn.
Where were you?
But then in Brooklyn Heights.
No,
in Williamsburg.
East Village.
Well, I didn't live there. I worked there. So it was like my work neighborhood.
Okay, but where then?
On 2nd and 12th.
Okay. I lived
right
on
next to the
10th
Chase Bank.
Okay. I lived on 10th between 1st and A and then 6th and A. So like close.
I love that area. And that's where we met. He was working as a chef at the sister restaurant that I was managing, and I would always go into their restaurant to use the office because, as you know, or anybody who's worked in a restaurant, if you try to do your work, every other employee wants to talk to you while you're working. So I had to go to the office, and I just passed by him, and I didn't really notice or pay attention because I was so focused on just keeping my job that I didn't want to get distracted by the guys. But he was so kind, and he actually helped me find a place to live, and he showed me around the subway, and I didn't realize how much I needed a friend that had my back. And I was trying to do it all on my own, and I just needed he's just a good, normal dude. And that's what I wanted and needed, and I didn't even know. And
did he move to LA with you?
He did. We drove across country in his 1999 blue Volvo, which is named Betty, and she just died recently. But I know he's actually still grieving. But we did that trip together, and he helped me so much. I mean, he was so non-judgmental. Even though he's a chef, he has a background in journalism. That's what he studied in college. And so the way that he just wanted to know what I thought and what I experienced was so kind. And like, I even remember, and I wrote about this, I think we were in the car together driving through Utah or something. And he goes, babe, didn't you think it was weird that you had to ask permission to eat? And I was like, yeah, I did. Not then, but now I do. And it was just like little moments like that just started to make me realize that I could trust him, that he actually wasn't there to judge me or get information out of me. He really just wanted to know me from me. And he doesn't even associate me really with NXIVM. He's like, that's the past and we have our life.
That's amazing.
So I just feel really lucky.
Yeah, that's amazing. I had well, as I said, like I was assaulted a few years ago. I guess it would have been, I mean, as an adult, I've had it again, like weird shit happens when you're a kid and like inappropriate things and whatever. But it took me like, I guess it was about a year and a half before I was able to date. And then, like when I met my now fiance as well, he was this just so patient and kind and just, protective and all of this stuff. And I'd like never had that, and I was like,
why
what?
are you so nice?
Yeah. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. Unlike,
where's the
unlike anything I'd ever experienced. So it was super uncomfortable. But yeah, I don't know. He was so important for as well, just like learning how to have a healthy relationship with someone. Right. It's funny you say that, like me, Dave is a musician and my dad was a musician. So it's like been this healing relationship as well of like having to deal with that. But
I can see that.
Yeah. So obviously Keith has been recently got convicted.
120-year sentence. So we're all pretty pleased with that.
Yeah. So that was like a week and a half ago or something?
Correct. On Tuesday, not this one, but the one before.
Okay. How did that feel? Oh, and the crazy, it's sort of all the timing of everything like worked out. It was wild.
It was just divine timing because we did not know that was going to happen then. They actually had moved the sentencing for the past year. And then it got delayed again because of COVID. And at one point I thought I was just going to send in a statement and that I wouldn't fly to New York because of quarantine. And I didn't want to, scare my mom by coming back. And, but I've had plenty of COVID tests anyways. So that was hard. And I didn't really know how I was going to feel or what to expect. I wrote probably 15 different victim impact statements that just didn't feel right. And then finally I was like, India, this is the last one. Stop. Like, just go out there. You have 8 minutes to say your piece and then it's over and you can close it up. And that's kind of just how I kept preparing myself. And I was really nervous and anxious. And the night before I definitely had a panic attack and needed a little help. But when I was in the room, I was just so inspired by all the other men and women who spoke that I felt strong just by being around them. And one of my best friends, actually, she spoke before me. And I was just like, okay, we got each other's back. Like, we can do this. And I ended up addressing Keith directly in his eyes at certain points. And I felt really protected. And afterwards, actually kind of calm. And I'm still processing it,
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, what was it like to see him for the,
He just looks so small. Like, and so he was putting on this like martyr act. Yeah. Like he was this little, like, poor me. Right. And then he kept looking up at his lawyer every time he would say something. And I was like, ew, like, stop.
Isn't it crazy once you take people out of their like their environments and you look at them and you're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
So I know we have to wrap up soon. So I wanted to just ask you, what would you say, what would be your sort of message to, younger women or girls just in general, they might not be entering into a dangerous situation or whatnot, but just like, what is a thing that you would like to share with, whether it's girls our age or younger, just something like that you wished that's been the most helpful or.
That one of the things that was so helpful to me was actually, I lost my house in the Woolsey fires right after I came home in 2018. It was like the cherry on the top. And I went to a therapist right after that, who told me that I was valuable without having to do anything, that just the fact that I existed and I'm here on this planet brings value to me, and that I don't have to do anything for anybody in order to feel that or believe that about myself. And I know it sounds so cliche and simple, but it really impacted me, because for so long I had spent my time trying to prove myself and prove my worth to other people that I depleted myself, and I was desperate. And I just want myself and other women to know that they're valuable and they're beautiful and that they're worth it because they are here, and that our lives matter.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
Lastly, actually, I'm going to ask you, have you ever considered like reading your impact statement online or anything?
No,
Or is that supposed to be private?
No, it's not private, actually. I think that the press took snippets from it. So I would be happy to read it online at one point, because then I would know that it was all accurate.
Yeah. It seems like that's been a big part of your story, as you said, just like reclaiming the story as to how you experienced it and what you know to be true. And, and that's why Seduced and your book, why it's so powerful and important, because no one's writing that story for you.
Nope, just me.
Okay. Well, thank you
so much.
So let's quickly, after this, if we can just take a few like screenshot photos, and then I'm going to pause recording. So I'm just going to say, for everybody who has not seen Seduced, which you should, but if you haven't, please watch it. It is available on the Starz app. And again, India's book that she wrote, which is incredible as well, which is Still Learning, and it is available on Audible. So you get to hear her reading the story, which is an absolute highlight because she has an incredible voice and is an amazing writer. So please go and listen or watch or anything. You'll be better for it. So thank you.